Oh, oh, jeez. There we go. Hi, good evening, Michael. I'm gonna move my camera a little bit. Whee! Hello, Michael. Michael's on audio. Hey, there's Michael. I see you,
No,
just briefly.
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see me anymore. I don't want to run up my juice. You had me on muted.
Oh, sorry. Is that part of your dues, a SAG thing? If your image is recorded is more
Yes,
expensive?
yes. That's a much better excuse. No, I don't want to run out my juice. I don't want to have to stand around with
Oh, your Jews. I thought you said your dues.
well, I could have said Jews also, but
You could have said Jews, yeah. Zionism.
now Jim said he was. Did he say he was going to try to be on it by 9:30?
Yeah,
And
that's
what
right.
about Alex?
I don't know because I just started. It's already 6:09. I'll send an email to Dennis. I don't know
Yes,
who else.
email to the others so if they want to get on. So we'll just
Okay.
start.
I'll send it to everybody. That's a good
Last,
idea.
yeah, last week I couldn't get on at all.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what happened. Of course, that could have been from my end also. I don't know how my Wi-Fi could have been off or something. But if you'll notice, I was missing last week, and not first time I've been missing, but I just couldn't get on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I'm going to send everybody a link to everybody. Oh, how do I do this? Okay. Here we go.
just say
I'm
we're
just going to say started late
come on
to
down.
all the recipients
Right.
and say started late, but here we are.
So how have you been otherwise?
Oh, well, I had a lot of teeth pulled, which is okay. I survived. But and then they gave me a denture. So I'm like an old man, I got a denture. So I leave the house, I got to check. You have the keys, you have your phone, you have your wallet, you have your eyeballs, you got your denture, you got your your fake leg.
Are you getting implants?
I've had implants, but implants don't necessarily last forever because if the bone recedes, the part of the implant gets exposed and it's subject to infection. So
Yeah,
they had
they
to
just
take
have
two
to-
implants out.
Are they putting new ones in?
They may eventually, but I said in the meantime, let's do this temporary denture. I don't know. You can't, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, so here's the smile. Wait, let me just see what the smile looks like before I
I,
send the email out.
I can see your bottom teeth there. I just saw them.
There's
Is
my
it your
top.
bottom teeth?
No, no, no. It's my top teeth.
No, looks absolutely normal.
Yeah, it looks normal. That's right. I can go back and my movie career is not over.
Well, there's the rest of your face also you have to worry about.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So that, but that's okay because if the one things you got to get, I think one of the things you have to adjust to in the senior years, the parting years, waiting for the train to come, they get on the train and you're gone. You got to get used to losing things. There goes a friend, there goes another friend, here goes a relative. Maybe you lost your hard drive, you can't find your keys, there goes some teeth. So you got to get used to that.
From the time we reach adulthood, we're losing stuff.
Yeah.
Including hair. Now, men, they said there's only two types of adult men that have every hair they started with. And there's only two types of men that have every hair that they started with, children and eunuchs. So we're always losing something. But doesn't matter as long as you can. I'm not a candidate for dentures because I have sensitive gums. So if the dentures don't bother you, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I don't know how to explain it. It's like walking around in a winter coat. It's kind of bulky.
Oh,
And
really?
it isn't, yeah, and it isn't quite, it doesn't give you the same thing as clicking your teeth together. But I'm getting used to it. And as I meant this seriously, because you know what it is? I used to be very critical. This is all, we're not recording this, okay? I used to be very critical of women who were getting boob jobs, I never liked it. You know what I mean? I said, why did you do that? I'd rather have you the way you are.
Right. I agree.
And so I was, why are you doing that? Why are you getting a nose job and so forth? Just live with what you got. Men are more interested in your attitude and your acceptance of them and your
Right.
the way, when's the last, I once had a girl who lit a cigarette for me. I nearly fainted. You know what I mean?
That was awfully nice of her.
Well, I mean, it shows like, oh my God, she's interested in me.
No, it actually just shows she was being polite, but
Well, I know, but it's sort of like, this is like 1990 or something, or 1980, whenever it was. No, actually, maybe 75 or something. But still, it's not like we're in the South, This is like here, and I didn't ask her anything. She just leaned over and lit the cigarette for me, and I don't think she smokes. But it's so that's what's interesting. That's the attractiveness of women, that they're paying attention to you and they listen.
look, if a woman said hello to me, I thought she was interested in me.
If she just stopped in a stranger, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, then definitely. But
Okay, so I'm sending this thing out. We got started late, and I'll put that in the title too. And I can fix that here. Does this edit subject line? Okay. And just send it without any more editing. Send, and okay. So now that's out. We'll see if that picks anybody up.
All right.
And let me get back to my thing here. So what's new? Oh, so, and then I mean, this is like, I don't want to talk about, medical stuff because that's what my parents used to do,
That's
How's your back? What about that foot? You still got the gangrene?
Well, that's part of getting older.
I know, but it's sort of like, there's no point in talking about it. But let's put it this way. I went to a orthopedic guy, which it's free,
Mhm.
take some x-rays and tell me how my back's doing. So he says, you get a bill, you're good, you're fine. And I said, good. So now we got a base. You got a base there so that if I come back, you'll know where I was. And now you'll see how it's deteriorating or something. So but he said, everybody's got arthritis. There we go. Who's that? Is that you? Hi,
No.
good evening, Michael. Oh, I know what it is. I know what it
Move my
is.
camera a little bit.
There we go. Got it.
This is a recording of your opening statements.
Yeah. Right. So this is what I got to hit that. Okay, there we go. I'm glad to know what it was anyhow. So he said the thing that prevents arthritis, which can be not just in your joints, but in your backbone,
Mhm.
is vitamin D and vitamin C and calcium.
Well, vitamin C, I do a lot of, but I have arthritis already. And I can tell you, the worst part of it is I also now have 3 fractured ribs, which I've had for about a month now.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the arthritis is a pain because I don't know what's bothering me. Is it my arthritis? Is it the fractured ribs?
Well, was the arthritis in your joints?
Well, it's in my neck and lower back a little bit.
Well,
Mainly
does any substance defray the pain, like pot or alcohol or
water.
just water,
Yeah, it's not painful. It's just that, it's uncomfortable. I got to do exercises for my neck and things like that. It's like sometimes you're sitting there and you want to just lean your neck forward. And then after a few minutes, you want to lean it all the way back. And then after a few minutes, you want to lean it forward again. So it's just a pain. Not a literal pain.
huh?
But the idea is that now that I got the 3 fractured ribs, I gotta, decide. I gotta just, figure out whether or not it's the fractured ribs that are bothering me or the arthritis.
Yeah. Do they
So,
have maybe there's like an AA group and get something out of it, meet some people who are
what do you mean?
empathetic with rheumatism or something, with arthritis.
Well, I figure, you can get through it. There are exercises you can do. The only problem is if I meet the right woman and I want to have sex with her, I just don't want this interfering. Good, you're drinking water. I hope you're drinking water.
Yeah, I drink water. I think in a romance, even on the first date, you can do something kinky until you get over the arthritis.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm
Look,
sure you have a panoply of kinky things at least you want to do.
yeah, I'm pretty boring.
Oh,
But no, don't get me wrong. No woman I've been with ever complained about our bedtime experiences. But
yeah,
who knows? Like you said, we're getting older.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of jokes with that. And one of
Yep.
the funny one I remember was with this guy the first time he has sex, and she says, "What are you doing? That's the wrong hole." Or the lady of the night who says, "Is it in?"
Right, that's an old one.
That's an old. Yeah, it's okay.
Speaking of,
Some I don't know. I think porn joke or sex jokes are okay as long as but too many comics do it like gross. Start
gross
talking
isn't
about it.
necessarily funny.
It's
Clever
that,
is funny.
yeah, clever is good. Like the thing about what do you want? Super sex.
Right.
You know.
One of my father's favorite jokes.
Yeah.
Um, what was
You
the other
know.
one he liked about the guy who his wife is always complaining that he doesn't make enough money, and he says,
Mhm.
So why don't you try to bring in some money? Why don't you try to get a job? And his wife says, all right, I will. And he says, what are you going to do? You can't do anything. She says, I'll become a hooker. He says, oh, yeah? Okay. So the next morning, he goes out to work and she goes out to become a hooker. He comes home later that evening, about 6 or 7. She's not there. 8 or 9, she's not there. 9 or 10, she's not there. He's beginning to get worried. Finally, at 2 in the morning, she comes in. Her clothes are all disheveled. Her hair's all messed up. And he says, where the hell were you? She says, well, I went out. I got a job as a hooker. And he said, oh, yeah? Really? She said, yeah. He said, yeah. How much did you make? She said, $39.10. And he says, $39.10. And then he says, who gave you the 10 cents? And she says, they all did.
Yeah, there you go. That's a surprise. You know, the surprise ending that you didn't anticipate.
That is what it's clever humor.
Right.
I have to have a surprise. It has to be a twist. And anybody who comes up and just figures out they could just say the most grotesque thing possible, and it's
Yeah.
going to be funny, and that ain't going to last long.
It doesn't last long, right?
But then again, the world's getting dumber.
Well, I don't know. Oh, well, maybe, yeah, in the short run. I mean,
Yeah.
well, you got to realize what we call intelligence is a sifted like collection of a few of a small group of people that the iconic philosophers like Plato, Socrates, or this guy or that guy or Jean Locke or whoever, it's maybe 1,000 people at tops out of millions and billions of people. And maybe everybody else is stupid. Maybe there's, one guy in 100,000 who's brilliant.
Wait
So,
a second. Where does that leave us?
well, I try to get along with the average man, no matter how disconnected I get. No, I'm just saying, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like whoever your hero is, Karl Marx, Adolf Hitler, they stand out of the crowd.
Well, I hate to say it, but most of those guys weren't as smart as people make them out to be.
You think not?
I think the smartest people in the world we never hear about because they're so smart, they stay out of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They get so smart, they say, I don't want to have to do anything to do with anybody. So they go live up on a shack in northern Canada, and they just say, the hell with you people. I don't want to deal with you. Those are probably the real geniuses in the world.
Yeah. But yes, but the angels are the ones that are participating, trying to improve things.
Because they're not smart enough to say, I've had it.
I no. Okay.
Being facetious a little bit.
I think a standard characteristic. I bought into the philosophy that says that any game for an individual, any game is better than no game, even if it's biting your fingernails. If you can't do anything else, you'll bite your fingernails because at least it's something. You need to be engaged in, because I wrote it to somebody the other day, into changing things or causing something to continue, like, continue to water the flowers or put the flower in a new pot, but, changing something or maintaining something so it doesn't change, one or the other.
Well, I always maintain that the universe, everything is meaningless because in the whole scheme of the whole universe, nothing we do matters. Nothing matters. We're just machines that just die off after a while. And I was telling this to some woman that I'd originally wanted to go out with, but didn't see there was much of a chance. That's why I was talking to her that way. I was saying, yeah, it's all meaningless and everything. And she says, well, then what's the point? Then what's the point of doing anything? I said, well, you got to do something. While we're sitting here being meaningless, we got to occupy ourselves. So that's all.
Yeah. Now the smartphone, to me personally, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I can spend a whole goddamn day watching YouTube shorts, I don't know if you watch those on your whatever device you have, but
No,
they're
some of-
basically they're like a minute and a half. It's basically like a mimicking of TikTok.
Oh,
And
all
there's so many people doing things and recording interesting things, and bears and tigers and cats and you know, different things they're doing, or excerpts from movies. You know, it's
Well, you know,
and it's like it's catering to me because it knows what I want to see, so it provides more.
oh, you mean it figures out what your likes and dislikes are and sends you the appropriate
Yeah, of course, right. I mean, I'm going to throw something else in sometimes, and of course, it's like I'm looking to buy I've already bought one, a keypad people lock. You know, so people punch in a number and it opens. So then I get those ads all the time, you know, because they know I'm looking for it.
Yeah, but once you buy it, you're not looking for it anymore.
Nah, they don't know.
And they just keep on sending it to you. I was doing research for my plays, and I had to do research. One thing I had to research was the 12th SS Panzer Division during World War II,
Uh-huh.
Waffen SS Division. So I got all the research I needed. Then I started getting this stuff, these ads for saying, ads for Nazi memorabilia.
Uh-huh.
I'm going, no, that's not why I was looking.
Yeah, but you're a good candidate. So well, think if you're in a business, you say like, do I want to talk to people who potentially may no longer be looking, but they were? Or do I just want to go out to everybody there is without any qualification? So it could be like a 14-year-old girl who's all hung up on Taylor Swift, or it could be an old guy who's just, you know, thinking about killing his wife. Or should I just concentrate on people that have some interest in World War II and Nazis? You know, and then the more qualified it could be, like you watched a couple of series. I was watching a whole series of movies about, I forget what they call the Nazi big things. I forget what they call
it. The Nazi super weapon.
Yeah, the things they did, you know, the secret weapons and everything.
Right.
And it was interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And it was well produced and so forth. So, you know, I'm a good target for Nazi pal. You know, why not?
Sure. But the idea is once you're done.
Targeted marketing.
But once you're done, it's like, I feel sorry for people that, you know, let's say the 14-year-old girl who's a Taylor Swift fan, and then she gets fed up with Taylor Swift, but 10 years later, she's still getting stuff about Taylor Swift. You know, but she's already into something else. I don't know. I don't know how long they last. I know one thing. It doesn't cost them any extra to target more people rather than less. So what the hell?
Well, yeah, but the mechanics are, if I'm selling the advertisement and I say, this is for dentists who are over 40 and they have the size of their practice is, you know, $4 million a year, and they live on the East Coast and so forth, and they're married and they got 4 kids. The more data I can give, the better. In fact, they I don't know. I think I've run into this where they said they can ask you 3 or 4 questions and they'll tell you what your political party is and where you went to school, you know?
Right. Well, the other day I got a phone call on I never use my home phone. It's part of a Spectrum package. The only reason I use it is it's the only way I can call Canada.
Uh-huh.
But otherwise, I use my cell phone. So I don't give out my home phone number. So I get a call and they said, oh, we're from Social Security. We want to know if you got your Social Security card. Can you give us your Social Security number? And I said, oh, you're from Social Security number? He said, that's funny. I never gave this number out to Social Security. But why don't you give me a number? Tell me what the Social Security number. I'll call you back.
Right.
Why don't you tell me what department in Social Security you're at? Click.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
You got it. You know.
That's part of this new age, the digital age. Is a lot of it opens up the door for anybody who can figure out a new scam. You know.
Right.
That's right.
That's okay. I mean, that's, it's part of the background. Or like the program doesn't work, or, it's the reliability fell down, or somebody hacked and they got your account and they bought
Right.
everything on your credit card. You
Right.
can't, it's the exposure is part of the convenience. Oh,
Yeah.
like in other words, this door lock, you could get a key lock door that you can control with a phone. Of course, you open yourself up to somebody who could hack it and
Right.
get in and open the lock or change all the codes.
That's right. And that's why I don't like doing that. I
Yeah,
mean,
but you don't want to. You're using a certain amount of modern technology.
well,
You
there's stuff
you
we have to
you use
use.
the elevator, right?
Yeah, we have to do that. We have to make phone calls. There's stuff
Mhm.
that we have to do. But stuff that you don't have to do, I figure what's the difference? I try to avoid computerized banking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I had a couple of problems. They were resolved, but I got a couple of problems. So I said, look, I don't even like um, in other words, paying by credit card online. I'll do it when I have to, but I'd rather not. I don't know who's hacking in there.
Yeah. My wife, Grace, pointed out to me. I guess she saw it somewhere. There's an absolute uh, undisclosed or unconsidered leech on all of our economics, and it's credit cards.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you buy something, you go to a restaurant, you buy some 3% goes to the credit card company. Then the owner of the store buys potatoes or this or that, he puts on the credit card,
right,
uses the credit card to make the sale. There's another 3%. So every dollar keeps getting hit on, and whenever it moves, let's say at least 60% of the time, another 3% goes to credit card companies, and they just have trillions and trillions of dollars.
right.
You know,
And that's
that's
why,
how come if you ever had a credit card thing.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Grace. I'm in a meeting.
Okay.
So if you ever had somebody stole your card and they call you up and they say, were you in Texas? Did you buy a boat?
yep,
Say no, what happened? So they don't care. They just cover that up because they don't want the public to go nuts on that. They
oh
don't
yeah.
really chase it up. It's.
Well, my credit card company, I've had bad charges on there,
Yeah.
and and I say, when I catch them or something, I'll say, look, there's a problem there. And one good thing about my credit card company is they'll put it in dispute um, until they verify it. So,
They don't charge you.
right,
That's what I'm
right,
saying. That's right.
yeah,
They don't charge you because they just eat that because they're making so much money. The worst thing that can happen is people go back to cash, you know,
yeah.
and it
And,
cuts them out of that 3%. It's like
and
the mafia.
a lot of restaurants are doing that.
I haven't seen that. I've seen restaurants that say no cash, and maybe because they don't want to get robbed, so they only have cash, and then only have cards. And what's taken the place of cash is Zelle. You know
Yes,
that, right?
yeah.
So you can pay by Zelle, and
But
there's no fee.
that's got problems of its own.
Of
No,
course.
there are restaurants in New York more than I've seen in the past 20 or 30 years, more now, which are saying cash only,
Wow.
or what they're saying is um, the price for this item is is
Yeah,
$10,
yeah.
but
It's
it's
more if
12.
it's more if you want to put it on a card.
Right,
Yeah,
right, and because they don't want to pay the fees anymore,
yeah,
they tack the fee onto your bill, and I'm sure the credit card companies are getting ticked off at that because there's less activity. People will say, hey, you know, I've got cash on me. What's the difference? I'm going to wind up paying one way or the other. I
yeah.
might as well get it for less by paying cash now. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's actually more of instead it's not just to saving the money. It seems to be kind of like an indication that you're breaking, you don't like the system, the way it's all tied up, that the people at the top make all the money. The credit card companies make all the money. They get 3% on everything.
Right.
Oh, and another way to fight that was, I think it's like if you buy from Amazon, Grace is always telling me, go to smile.amazon or something, which is they donate some money every time you make a purchase. Oh, you know who is talking about that all the time? McPherson, Daryl.
Oh,
That's how we
really?
could solve all our problems. Yeah, if everybody made all their purchases on through a system where a donation is made and target that donation for a Pacifica program, and that would solve everything. Yeah. I
Well,
don't
I
think
don't.
that's the problem with Pacifica.
No,
It's not money.
um, as a matter of fact, I don't know what's going on with WBAI out here. They're, I mean, everything I hear, it's like, it's like a mudslide. It's just falling apart. And you've got people at WBAI who have shows on that have no audience or practically no audience, and they're insisting that they want to stay on the air. It's just craziness.
Yeah, that's been a long-term problem, is the programmers, uh, you know, and so you give a guy a show, you say, how many relatives do you have and how much you have to pay them to listen to the program? Because they're sick of listening to yes, it's completely backwards. It's sort of like, because they're trying to accommodate the broadcaster instead of the audience.
Right.
It's ridiculous. There's one good show out here where the guy's talking to, it's Hollywood, so he could talk to somebody on some connection to celebrities. A
Right.
guy who's a sound man for somebody, and he could tell a story about David Bowie or Mick Jagger.
Right.
That kind of that is popular.
Sure. And you've got
Gossip about celebrities.
um
And there's some guys who just love to talk about that stuff. They go on for hours.
and there's people who like to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be quite honest,
Right.
our parents probably thought that was a lot of crap trap, but we were brought up on television and movies and shit like that. And kids today are being brought up on computers. So whatever it is, that's what interested them as kids. So they like that. Look, I love hearing stories about um Hollywood or something like that. But
Did you watch the Grammys? Not the
no,
Grammys. Was it the Grammys or what's
the Golden Globes.
the
Nope.
Golden Globes? Yeah.
No, I don't want to see awards anymore.
Oh, okay.
No, because
Congratulations.
it's not about the awards anymore. I mean, in other words, you used to watch the Academy Award, and it was all about, who was up for the Academy Awards, who won, who lost, whatever. But now it's, there's these shows and these political statements and political correctness or whatever, something. It's an award show. It's like, I mean, it's not as good as seeing the movie, but it's an added attraction. But they made it into such a big thing. I just who was wearing what on the awards, and everything is is scripted badly, I might add. People have to deliver these bad jokes. Um, what's the point?
Right. Well, because movies used to be, I don't think they are anymore. I mean, the American movie was like a product that we all participated in. It was our brand, like the Ten Commandments or Giant or even
Right.
Lawrence of Arabia. We felt like, well, that's part of the movie industry, that we could
Right.
make this kind of an epic, or, Magnificent Seven or whatever it was. And let's give some credit to the Japanese or the Italians for their movies, but it was a nationalistic thing. And it
Well,
was
it was a
pride.
pretty,
Starting Gone with the Wind, or the Wizard of Oz.
even further back into silent films. I mean, and I used to say it was an English language film thing, because it
Uh-huh.
was, Britain and the United States I mean, you could have a British, or as long as it was in English, it would be usually popular in they were usually popular in the United States and Great Britain
And
and
Canada and Australia and,
yeah,
South
right.
Africa.
But and what they would do is Hollywood, when Hollywood movies started becoming much more popular in non-English speaking countries, to avoid the subtitles and everything, or avoid them as much as possible, they just make a lot of action. There'd be a lot of action movies, a lot of action sequences, so you didn't have to translate anything. So that's, I mean, people wonder, why do we have all these, action-oriented epics? They used to have these scripts because they don't want to translate them anymore. They're lazy.
Yeah, okay, yes. But also it's an international market now. So, in other words, they always report how much of film made here, but then they'll say, but in international, it made another 40, 50, 60% as much
Oh
in
yeah,
Europe.
I'll never forget. No, go on.
So let's say a movie, who is a good actor for that now is Jason Stratham. I think I got his name. Did you ever see him? Transporter.
Probably.
Yeah, his first film was he was in Snatched.
Okay.
It was a very good movie.
I don't know. Yeah.
You must have seen Snatched. That's Guy Ritchie film.
Nope.
Oh my.
I've been to, as far as I go to revival theaters sometimes, but I've walked into a movie theater maybe 4 times in as many years.
Well, yeah, but what, you got a TV, you got a computer.
I don't watch them on cable, the newer ones. I watch Turner Classic Movies.
All right. Yeah, that's Grace watches those.
Well, one of the reasons is because the script was more important in those days.
Wait a minute, how do you watch those without cable?
I have cable.
Oh, you do have cable. Okay.
But that's one of
the
only
script was more important. The acting's just as good, and sometimes the production and the cinematography is excellent.
Right. But if you're just like, in other words, movies today, they want as little dialogue as possible. But in the older movies, the dialogue, there was a lot more dialogue. So there were a lot more good lines you could remember, things like that.
Yeah. So, we're both, me and my wife are big fans of The Thin Man.
Right.
Very
witty films.
Right. I mean, and charming people.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody you want to have dinner with,
Well, you could watch them on different levels. You could watch them as a whodunit. You could watch them for the witty repartee between the two main characters. I thought, sometimes I would watch a Thin Man movie. I didn't give a damn who did it or anything like that. I just liked listening to the banter.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes you don't think there's anything like that today. I think I've been watching these 2 series of cop shows. One is called Elementary, which is about like a Sherlock Holmes in 1990s New York or 2014 New York. And the other one is The Rookie. And they're well produced, Another one was Justified. And there's a mixture of violence, but with drama and soap opera and groovy lines, but action and I don't know, good acting.
No, you like the show, you like it.
If you like it, you like it. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, everybody says, "Oh, you're so artistically minded, Mike." Everything. You talk about West Side Story as a work of art and all these things and the stuff that isn't art. But when I was a kid, my favorite TV show was The Man from U.N.C.L.E. So, I mean, we have both sides of us. There's, people like different things. I can watch the Three Stooges and be laughing out loud.
Yeah.
Because they were funny.
So it's what you need at the time, basically.
Yeah, and
But
it's well, in terms of like the, it's sort of like this. There are requirements for poetry, right?
yeah, supposedly, yeah.
And then they have different categories of poetry. Then they have prose and this and so forth. But within that, you create, but you have to stay within those barriers. So you have that with a sitcom. So you have that with a horror movie. So you have that with a romance. You're within certain barriers, and then you can do what you want creatively. You still have to keep the audience interested. You still have to create, usually, no matter what the boundaries are, you have to create mystery and curiosity and suspense so that you're anticipating something. Like, you're anticipating, when is she going to find out he's cheating on her? That kind of a thing in a romance. Or when are they going to find out he's the one who stole the money?
Right. And you know something? They used to say, TV shows especially, they'd have a formula. They'd say, oh, they're formulaic. There'd be a formula. But there was a reason for the formula.
Yeah.
Formula was, that's what could keep people interested for that length of time. Most of the people. So that was it. I mean, the problem that always happens with television series, I find, is that the first 1 or 2 seasons will be great, but then they run out of ideas, so they deviate from the original concept, and people start tuning out because it wasn't what they originally tuned in for. But that's the nature of the business.
It was a successful formula. Let's say, have you seen, I'm assuming I have to ask you this. Have you seen many episodes of Law and Order?
I don't like the show. I've seen several episodes. I've auditioned for it numerous times. They loved my acting and they never cast me. So that didn't endear me to them either. But yeah, Law and Order has a definite formula.
Yeah, and it's the same thing all the time. And the thing that makes it interesting is I found a subset, to their formula. But anyhow, the formula was always start with the murder scene. That's the first scene. They find a dead body. Some kids playing ball and they find a dead body. So come up with an interesting way. They found the body, like looked in a fridge or whatever. Then they got the cops, and they're kind of like, very New York-y type cops. And then the second half, on the trial part, they always try to cover some interesting quirk of the law, like jurisdiction or double indemnity or something. So it's somewhat educational. And then towards the end of the show, they reveal who the real criminal was or whatever. That's a surprise thing. But what I found out was, if you see some actor that you recognize in the first 15 minutes of the show, it doesn't matter what he is. He could be the guy parking the car, or the bellhop, or a dentist who says, oh, she's in here. It doesn't matter. As long as you see this guy say, oh, he's a regular actor. He's like a B actor, character actor. He must be the one who did the murder.
Exactly.
Right.
If you see a guy in what seems like an inconsequential, a well-known guy in an seemingly inconsequential role, he did it.
Right. Right. He's just there for 10 seconds. Says, oh, of course, there you go. And then but he's going to come back, and he's the one who did it.
Right. You see Tom Cruise playing a janitor with 2 lines at the first 15 minutes.
Well, it's not even Tom Cruise. I don't know the names of these guys. The people whose names you don't know, like the second banana in Sopranos or something.
No, anybody who is, like you said, recognizable, who's more recognizable than the other guest stars on the show. They're not. He's not on there for 2 lines, so he's coming back. So he's pivotal, and usually in a crime drama, it's because he did it. By the way, about Law and Order, a good friend of mine who's passed away, rest in peace. This guy named James McAdams. He was the executive. He was a bit older than me, but he and his wife, we were all friends, and he was executive producer on The Equalizer and Kojak. I mean, he basically was in charge of both those shows. And
The
when
Equalizer with the British guy?
yes, Edward Woodward, yeah.
Okay.
And when he knew Dick Wolf, who created Law and Order, and he said, everybody's raving about the show. He said, but it's just a knockoff of a show they did in the 60s called Arrest and Trial.
I
don't know if
never heard of it.
It was a show, it was an hour and a half long. And the first 45 minutes was the arrest. Ben Gazzara played the cop, and Chuck Connors played a lawyer.
Oh.
So the first 45 minutes concentrated on the arrest, tracking down the criminals. And then he would go to trial. And it lasted, I think, 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And then went off. It was a 90-minute show. And all Dick Wolf did is said, hey, we can do that again. We'll do it in an hour format.
Right, in New York.
Yeah, they say this on television especially.
New York's the third actor. New York's part of the acting.
Well, the funny thing is, the first couple of seasons, Jim used to, complain. He used to make fun of Dick Wolf. He said he got permission from the studios to film in New York, because back in the 80s and early 90s, they didn't want you to film in New York on television. They wanted to keep it in LA, where they had everything was there, cost less money. So Dick Wolf wanted to film in New York, and Jim would say, but he never shoots outside. Most of the first couple of seasons, most of the shows, it was all interiors.
Yeah.
He said he could have been in Tucson, Arizona. I mean, nobody would have known the difference. So, I mean, it was just funny that way. But television, everything on television is a knockoff of something else. I'll never forget when The Man from U.N.C.L.E. became a big hit. They had a spoof of it, which was Get Smart. Mission Impossible, which was trying a different tack on the espionage idea. I Spy. All these shows came on. Then those shows spawned knockoffs. There must have been 100 to 150 television series, some successful, some not, that were just knockoffs of knockoffs of knockoffs of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And where's The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? Why did they create that? Because of James Bond.
Yeah.
In the movies. So everything, people say, what an original show. Probably not. I mean, it could be a good show, but it's probably not original.
Well, everything. Do you think Shakespeare is original?
No, I know he stole from some other people.
Okay. And everybody steals from Shakespeare in the Bible,
Right. But the idea is, who did they steal it from? I mean, Jules Pfeiffer used to have a routine. He had a theater piece called Pfeiffer's People. And there was one segment where this guy comes out and he says, all my life, I wanted to be like Joey. I always admired Joey. I idolized Joey. I thought I tried to walk like him and talk like him and do everything like Joey. Then I found out Joey was idolizing and copying Harry. And he was walk and talk and do everything like Harry. And then I find out Harry was, idolizing and worshiping Fred. And he'd walk and talk like Fred and do everything like Fred. And you know who Fred was idolizing?
Yeah.
Joey.
Joey.
No,
Yeah.
he said Joey, that stupid little nerd that walks and talks like me. Yeah. It's all cyclical.
It's cyclical. Well, that's another thing. I don't know, you're not a fan of Law and Order, but what they would do, they took advantage of, first of all, everybody would say, oh, they got so many good actors in New York, these character actors from off-Broadway shows and everything. And what they would do is they would it's an ensemble, you know, the cops are an ensemble and the
The
DA
lawyers.
and the prosecutor is an ensemble. It's the same three people usually.
Right.
You know, the chief of police and the lieutenant and then so forth, you know, small group of actors. But they would change them out after 1 or 2 seasons.
Right.
And they would kill them. So they could have a story where somebody died, a key character. So they'd knock off a key lawyer or a key cop. And it was like, what? That's unusual, you know. This is this guy I see every week, and now he's dead, you know, and they get another guy. So they don't have
the actors, if they know the actor's not coming back, you know.
Yeah, they know that. The guy could be tired of it. There was one actor who was, I can't remember his name, Moriarty.
Michael Moriarty.
Yeah, he was on that show. He was great because he's kind of weird, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a weirdness the way that the one that everybody impersonates, you know.
John Malkovich or
No, who does everybody impersonate? I like that the way, you know, he has a funny way of talking, like he's autistic.
Chris Walken.
Yeah, he's weird, like Christopher Walken is.
Yeah.
He goes like, what's he do? He's you know, he says his line strange, like he's looking and stuff.
Right.
But he was popular on the show because he had an intelligence. You could see he was intelligent.
Right.
But for some reason, he quit the show.
Well,
And everybody went, that was the stupidest career move anybody ever made because he was like number one.
He was weird in real life. He quit, and then he started this theater company, and that got too weird. And he wound up living in Vancouver, I think, where he's living now. And then he got arrested for some brawl in a bar. I don't know, something like
Yeah.
that.
Michael Moriarty, right.
Michael Moriarty. Look,
So I think he was the first cop.
Yeah,
I think he was the
no,
cop, not the lawyer. Maybe he was the lawyer. Maybe he was the lawyer.
Yeah. And there was, you know, I mean, he was strange, so he weirded himself off the show.
Yeah.
But other actors just said, I've had enough of this. I've done 3 seasons of this. I'm done. Or they had a movie.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You'll leave. Oh, well, I remember North, this guy North who was in
Chris North, yeah.
Chris North, right?
Yeah.
The way they got rid of him was they had an episode where he got pissed off at a politician, like a mayor or somebody, and he hit him. And they said, well, you know, and they put him on duty. They sent him to walk a beat in Staten Island instead of being a detective because he hit a politician. So that was the deal.
But they didn't.
But that got him off the show.
Yeah. But they didn't kill him off, so they could bring him back.
They could bring him back. That's right.
You know,
things like that.
I don't know if I ever told you my experience with auditioning for Law and Order. They called me in for a part which was like the main guest star. So I knew I wasn't getting this because they were going to get a name to do it. But I'm reading the dialogue, and this woman, Suzanne Ryan, who was the assistant casting director for that, she said, you're terrific. She said, could you do it all in a monotone? You know, and I said, you mean like Dragnet? And she said, yeah. And I said, you know, I hated Dragnet. And she said, yeah, but could you do it? I said, sure. So I did it the way she wanted. She said, terrific. And she said, and she called in the main casting director, Lynn Kressel. And then Suzanne said to me, she loves you, but this part isn't right. It's the main guest star. I said, I understand that. So they called me back a few months later, and they called me in for a part, which was like the third or fourth guest star. And they said, oh, and they sent it to the producers, and she came back and said, oh, they love you, but they didn't feel this was the right part for you. They want you to, you know, to find a part that really fits you because they think you're a great actor. I said, oh, okay. A few months later, I get called in. Part is smaller. I read for it. She sent it in. She said,
they love you, but they didn't think this is the right part for you. This went on for about 2.5 years.
Oh God.
Every few months I get called, and the parts get smaller and smaller, and there's more and more people in the room. Finally, I get called in. I walk in the room for a 2-line roll, 2 lines.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in the room, everybody's there. Head of production, Ed Sheeran, who created it, the executive producer, Dick Wolf was there, the studio head was there, the studio head on the East Coast. Everybody, there were 11 people in the room. And I walk in, I do the part, and they said, okay, can you do it this way? And that, they tried different ways. And I walk out, and Suzanne comes out and says, Mike, they loved you, but they didn't feel they want the right part for you. I said, look, Suzanne, they don't have to love me, just hire me. And I never heard from them again.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think that there was something they couldn't ask you to do that you were supposed to do, like flirt with somebody or something?
No, they just, they didn't know what they were doing. Jim McAdams.
Isn't well, I mean, like you've been doing this your whole life. The phrase was, it's not who you know, it's who you blow.
Yeah,
well, is it because my acting thing, I quit at a very specific time when I was doing an off-Broadway, whatever, and we're in somebody's house doing a rehearsal of Mice and Men. And the director doesn't show up for 2.5 hours. We're all sitting there waiting for him. And I said, this is not a real profession. Nobody's taking this. This is not real. Because as an actor, you're supposed to, you have a job. You're going to do something with the part. You're not there for the celebrity. You're there to perform.
To do your job. Right.
Yeah, that's what you're creating, a person,
Mm-hmm.
an image of somebody that you're portraying. And it just, and there was always sex and drugs and all this other stuff going on, but that's not the business. That's just incidental, that's for, and it's not, I don't mean everybody, but there was a lot of that,
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I was once sitting in a restaurant with one of the main agents for CAA, at the time, one of the top 3 agencies for actors in the world. And he was one of the top guys. And I just, a friend of mine, somebody else I knew him. So I was just sitting there, and the person recommended, they said, Mike's a great actor. And the guy said, well, look, Mike, we're too big for somebody at your level or something. I can write you a letter of recommendation. He said, but we don't really send people out. We just negotiate. We can't handle, people who are not, we only handle people who are already well known.
Right.
So you start out.
You have a provenance. You have
right.
A resume. It's a known commodity.
Right. So I said, sure, I understand that. And I said, I'll take the letter of recommendation. Anyway, after that, I'm talking, I happened to talk to this girl who's 21 years old, who had never acted in her life. She had just done a modeling gig. She was like on the arm. She was eye candy for somebody else coming into that restaurant. And that same agent was talking her up. He signed her.
Yeah.
Signed her that night.
Yeah.
She wasn't even an actress.
I understand, but she was good looking.
He wanted to fuck her.
Oh, he wanted to fuck her. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. So he signed her. So there's no liability in that. What does it cost him? Nothing.
Nothing. He was an
except maybe he's going to have to answer the phone or take her out to dinner sometime or something.
Yeah. And that's the business. It's a strange business. I knew going into it, there were a couple of guys. I forgot who they were, but they were well known for a while. And I wondered, I said, geez, these guys, they're all right. I don't know why they're getting all this work, though. They're not great. and I found out they were selling the right drugs to the right people.
Uh-huh. There you go. And they were actors, huh?
They were actors, but not very good ones.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
No, it's like once you can sell, all they have to do is be able to convince the public that these guys are good enough, and people will say, "Fine."
Yeah. I know. Well, we don't have to agree. I mean, we don't have to go along. A friend of mine just wrote a thing on Facebook about nobody likes YouTube, the band, but
Oh,
they're
yeah,
embarrassed to say that because they're led to believe that everybody likes it.
right.
You
They don't
know,
want to be the naysayer.
they don't want to be a buzzkill. So I said, yeah, well, let me tell you, here's a bunch of people I think were just hype. Like I always thought Donna Summers, the singer, was
Mhm.
his hype. I think Taylor Swift is like that. I watched this show of her. When she first came out, I'd say she's got everything. She's got look, she's young, she's gorgeous, she's blonde, she's ideal, and she's got a good voice. But I watched her special and it was like repetitive and silly. I
Mhm.
don't think there's nothing outstanding there. Nothing like Adele. Adele is knock you out of your chair. Not on
Well,
everything, but on some of her songs. But
I
there's other people like that are just, my David Bowie, I mean it's a big deal, we get 1 or 2 hits. So there's a lot of hype in the business, but to a degree, the business is hype. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it is.
But like you said, with the movie channel TCA or TWA, whatever it is.
CAA, yeah.
Turner Broadcasting, right?
TCM, yeah.
TCM. The older time actors, there was something there. Clark
Mhm.
Gable, Humphrey Bogart,
Right.
even Mitchell,
Robert Mitchum.
Robert Mitchum.
Well,
A good string of actors, and James Dean
mhm.
and the guy who was in the movie with him. What's his name? Now I forgot. The guy who was played his father in Rebel Without a Cause.
Jim Backus.
No, it's he was always in these old movies.
Oh, in East of Eden, Raymond Massey.
Yeah, Raymond Massey, right.
Right.
Guys like that. Okay, he's a character actor, but still, he carried some gravitas. I think he
Well,
played Lincoln a couple of times,
he played
and
Lincoln.
or certainly even contemporary actors like the guy who played Lincoln this time.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day. He's amazing. I
But
think.
he's British. The British are always in Britain. You don't become an actor unless you're going to get trained. And
Right.
you're going to work on stage and go through the whole routine. But
Yeah.
because back in the day, I mean, we can't, before our time, in the early part of the 20th century, people didn't become actors. It was a low-level profession. It was not
Right.
a dignified profession. So most of these people that they put into films came from the theater,
Yeah.
or some of them were stunt people, admittedly. But
Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster was a circus.
right. He was a circus performer, but they had something going on. In other words, people
Oh,
didn't.
do you know what? There was do you know Bust the Crab?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he told this story once in an interview. He says, well, they lined us. They were looking for somebody to play the hero. So they went to the swimming meet and they had all of the swimmers line up and they had the audience full of girls. And they said, got the girls vote on who was the cutest guy. And it was me. That's how we got the part. Bust the Crab.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
that's how they did things because they want. And look, as audience members, when we were younger, we were just as guilty. If there was a really good-looking woman and she was doing a nude scene in a movie, I'd go see it. I didn't give a shit if she was a good actress or whatever. I'd say, hey,
Yeah.
So
Wait for the bazooms.
yeah. So the idea is that they know what they're doing. The guys, casting this thing or picking out the actors. But I mean, it's always been bullshit.
Yeah, but I don't know if I ever made this point with you. I'm always amazed at Humphrey Bogart
Mhm.
because I think I can name 5 or 6 classic movies that he made. He was the star, like The
Mhm.
African Queen and Treasure Sierra Madre and the
Maltese
Caine
Falcon,
Mutiny,
Casablanca,
right?
Right, yeah.
And I'm leaving out some big ones,
Oh,
Maltese Falcon and
Casablanca.
El Casablanca. So that's like 5 or 6 movies.
Yeah,
He had, either a good agent or real intelligence in what he picked. And plus
yeah.
good performance.
Well, he didn't know it wasn't until he was really famous that he could pick them. That was the studio system. They basically tell people what to do. And
Oh,
Humphrey,
yeah, early on. But you don't think he had a control of what he performed in?
once he became a star, a big star, because
Yeah.
he spent like 10, 12 years doing little supporting roles that, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
even in the Roaring Twenties, you could see he was cast,
yeah,
that with James Cagney, but
right,
play a tough guy, or even Petrified Forest, he was playing a tough guy.
right, right. And there's a story about that they did the play Petrified Forest on Broadway, and Humphrey Bogart played the same part in the play. And um, Leslie Howard, who starred in the play, thought that Humphrey Bogart did an excellent job. So when they went to make the movie, they wanted to use Edward G. Robinson, who's a big
Oh,
star. And Leslie Howard said, if Humphrey Bogart doesn't do the movie, I don't do it.
uh-huh,
And Humphrey Bogart never forgot that. He
uh-huh.
named one of his kids after Leslie Howard. He was devoted to him because he
Yeah,
knew that if it wasn't for Leslie Howard, he might never have gotten. I mean, he might have worked, but he
right,
would never been a star.
right. That's interesting. Because
Yeah,
I think now that you said that, I would think that Edward G. Robinson would have been better for the part with the sneering,
yeah,
yeah, really? Yeah, you think you got it control? Yeah.
yeah. I would have thought that also. I mean, he was probably better for the part, but Humphrey Bogart did it on Broadway, and Leslie Howard felt that Humphrey Bogart did a good job, and he should get the part. Um, so and when Leslie Howard died during the war,
What was he in the military?
no, he was serving with British intelligence. He was British,
Okay, but
so
he was part of he was in the military intelligence.
he was intelligence, and his plane was shot down. I think it's a fascinating story. Churchill, Leslie Howard was doing basically delivering some information to agents in Lisbon and doing some public relations work for the British government, the British intelligence, and he was in Lisbon at the time. Churchill was also in Lisbon. He had a meeting there with the Montgomery and people about the North African campaign. Anyway, the German agents found out that Churchill was there. So British intelligence got a Churchill lookalike to get on a plane, and he was getting on a plane with Leslie Howard. And the German agents figured that's got to be the real Churchill because, this big movie star is also on that plane. And they shot that plane down. That wasn't, and Churchill was, of course, on another plane going back. So it's interesting. They kind of sacrificed Leslie
Yeah,
Howard and the poor guy who was impersonating Churchill. But it's kind of a sad story. But Leslie Howard, I mean, he knew he was at risk. I mean, when you work for British intelligence during World War II, you're always taking a risk.
yeah.
But so anyway, he was killed, and Humphrey Bogart was, I mean, I think he was really upset. I mean, it was like
But he wasn't in the military.
Humphrey Bogart was in World War I. So was Leslie Howard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Leslie
Wow.
Howard became an actor because he was being treated for shell shock from World War One, and part of it, the
Yeah.
therapy was acting training or whatever. And Humphrey Bogart had been in the Navy. I mean, people would say, "How did these guys? How come they weren't in the service?" She said, "Because they had already served, and they were older." Humphrey Bogart didn't become a star till he was in his 40s.
So he was in the Navy in World War One.
Yeah, yeah,
Wild. I mean, I found out somebody who was in the Air Force as a tail gun, no, a gunner, in a bomber in the front,
hmm
and that was Charles Bronson. I'd never heard that before.
yeah. Charles Bronson was he was wounded there also, not badly.
Yeah,
Jack Palance, remember Jack Palance?
yeah. Jack Palance was in the military too, right?
Yeah, he was a tail gunner on a B-24, and the
Uh-huh.
plane was hit, and he was badly burned. He had to have his face reconstructed, basically. So
Mm.
people would always make fun of the fact Jack Palance had this, strange looking face. That's why I always played bad guys. It was a strange looking face because they had to he had all these skin grafts.
Yeah,
And
it's amazing. Like, I mean, because several of them, I mean, like Jimmy Stewart and David Niven, joined the military after they were celebrities in the movies,
yeah,
I think,
and they
right?
joined from the beginning. James Stewart, he was a full colonel by the time the war ended. He went in as a private, and David Niven was in the war for 6 years, from the day the war started till the day the war ended. He was serving much of it overseas, all different types of jobs, things and everything, and it changed their view of acting, as a matter of fact. But the funny one, you remember Lou Ayres? He used to play
Yeah,
Dr. Kildare in the 30s.
yeah.
He was a good actor.
All
He
right.
was a conscientious objector.
Uh-huh.
And so that hurt his career
Yeah.
after the war. What
Well,
they
fuck
didn't
him. He's a
know,
conscientious objector. Fuck him.
right? But it turns out if you're a conscientious objector, it means you couldn't carry a gun.
Uh-huh.
You could still serve. He volunteered and he was a stretcher bearer. He
Oh,
was a medic, and he was wounded 3 times. He had 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star. He was in combat more than I'm for like 3 years. He just wasn't shooting at anybody, but he was under fire. But people didn't. They still said, "Oh, he was a conscientious objector," but he was in the middle of it.
yeah.
I
I've
mean,
seen movies about that, and like some people who a conscientious objector wouldn't fire a gun. I saw a whole movie with that. I'm trying to
yeah,
remember who played the guy's father. He's talking to the colonel about it.
was that Hacksaw Ridge?
I guess so, yeah. And
Yeah,
he got the people, the enemy to surrender, you know, or he
yeah,
saved the soldiers, whatever he
yeah.
did.
He saved a whole bunch of guys. And so all a conscientious objector means is that you can't be required to shoot at anyone, but you can be shot at.
Right.
You could be under fire. So they were jobs. They were medics. They could be, clergymen, whatever it was. They they're still in the middle of it. I mean,
Well, since you're a war buff and the actors and say, here's a question. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of drugs used in contemporary military actions. I mean, I heard stories that the only way they could have these planes fly from the US to attack Iraq in under Bush 1 and Bush 2.
mhm,
It was such a long flight, they had to be on certain drugs. They'd stay
yeah.
awake.
And
And
so
uh, and
during
then
World
the
War II,
stories about the Nazi soldiers all being on amphetamines.
yeah,
And do you
yeah,
think that was prominent? Oh, I think it was also prominent in Vietnam.
yeah. And it was prominent in World War II. Not the same type of drugs. They weren't no recreational drugs, but they would give out to soldiers Benzedrine because it
That
was an upper and it kept people awake. So if they're in the front lines and they got to stay awake because there may be an attack or a counterattack coming through, the guys would just, pop one of these pills. It would keep them up for for a day or two. They might crash after that, but it kept them up when they needed to be kept up. The Germans were giving their younger soldiers, they were drugging them up because they want, how else are you going to get people to charge against withering enemy fire, across an open field or something.
And World War I also, huh?
I don't know about World War One. I don't know if they had those things in World War One, but those are relative. I mean, they weren't. It wasn't nearly the same thing as in Vietnam and nowadays. But they just had these drugs. Nobody thought anything out of it. It was like Benzedrine was like the opposite of a sleeping pill. It just had the opposite effect. So people didn't think any of it. Look, they used to encourage soldiers to smoke, right? Because it created a need that could be satisfied. Cigarettes were cheap during the war. I mean, they were like a nickel I think a nickel a pack or something. It was something ridiculous. I mean, soldiers always had packs of cigarettes on them. Cigarettes were, no pun intended, a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
Anywhere, because the Army knew that if you couldn't get anything you needed, including protection against dying, if you could get a smoke, it would calm you down. If you have a need and you can satisfy that need, it calmed you down.
Yeah. Yep.
So
cigarettes are, somebody would point out, they're mostly punctuation.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we finished. Okay, I'm going to have a cigarette.
Right. Right. And that was it. So after they've been in combat, the guy's nerves would be frayed, but they'd have a cigarette.
Right.
Okay.
Or before they charge. Okay, well, let's have our last cigarette before we charge.
I have one more cigarette.
Sort of like punctuation, calmer period.
Punctuation is a good way of putting it. Yeah. It's and it worked. And they also, another thing I found out is that the reason that cases of battle fatigue were lower in the British Army than in the American Army. Canadians, it was about a mix. But because the British drank tea. They drank a lot of tea. And they want them to drink tea because it had caffeine, so it helped keep them awake. The Americans drank mostly coffee, which had even more caffeine. But coffee also made you nervous. Tea calmed you down. Tea was a calming. You have a cup of tea to calm yourself down because there's something in the tea that helps calm you down. But there's something in the coffee that makes you jittery. If you have 5 cups of coffee, you're like,
I'm okay. I'm not jittery unless you take my coffee away.
Right, exactly. So they figured this out after the war, the Americans. But the fact is, the British would encourage their soldiers to take a tea break. And the Americans and the Canadians would always say, what are these guys taking a tea break for? We're in the middle of a battle.
Yeah.
There was a reason. That a lot of the stuff that we hear that seems to make no sense, there's usually a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And but except for, but I don't think we're getting the coverage. Well, I should say that there was all these movies. There were, a lot of movies. They're still making movies about World War II. A lot of European movies still about Nazi occupation and so forth. Right. And there's still a lot of stories to tell. The one story that they haven't done was a documentary I saw about an Italian bicycle competitor. He competed in bicycle races. And because he would do that, he would ride bikes from Italy up to Germany or Romania or whatever in the contest, like the French, what do they call that, the bike thing in the French?
I forget what they call it, but I know what you're talking about.
Right? So, but he was transporting information for an underground railroad to get Jews out of Germany.
Right.
Put himself at tremendous risk. I've forgotten his name, but what a story, God!
I have to tell you something, Ken. I
What?
heard, and this is about a year or so ago, I heard that somebody was trying to make a movie about that.
You've heard about it too, right?
Yeah,
So they're still making movies about World War II. Then once
Mhm.
in a while they'll make something about World War One with horses and stuff.
Right.
And there was a period of Vietnam movies,
Yep.
but I can think, well, there was contemporary Iraq type movies was the one about the helicopter getting shot down.
Right. Right. Black Hawk Down.
Oh yeah, that was a pretty effective movie. And one of my favorite movies of all time is Three Kings.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The reason I liked it is because the director just pushed it as far as, he just pushed it the right amount because he put like this cartoon in the middle of it to show how the bullet went into something. So he broke the fourth wall of you're watching a movie and now here's a cartoon to show you how bullets affect people. But I said, okay, yeah, but he's using good judgment. He took a chance and to creatively express something. So I thought it was a very good movie, Three Kings.
I never saw it, to be quite honest.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And but I mean, there's not that many movies about Iraq or anything else that's going on. Or I think Clint Eastwood made one about invading Grenada.
Yes. Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah, and
not a great film, but
yeah, and then nobody made anything about invading Panama, and
no.
and I haven't seen any movies about the Falklands, the British fighting the Argentina and the Falklands. So
no,
not,
I wonder why. Because
I don't know.
That was an unusual little war. I had heard that somebody was toying with the idea of making a movie about the British submarine that sank the Argentinian battleship. And because it was the only time in history that a nuclear sub ever sank another ship.
Okay.
Or even attacked a ship. It was the only nuclear sub in history, that ever, fired its weapons.
I'm wondering if it's a question of diplomatic correctness. Like, in other words, the Falkland War is over. So Britain and Argentina came to some terms.
Right.
And let's not stir it up. No need to make a problem. Whereas Germany, World War II, the Nazis, you shit on them all day and night. And nobody cares. Everybody hates the Nazis,
Even the Germans hate the Nazis.
Yeah, the Germans hate the Nazis. And the Israel they made a few movies about, catching Eichmann or Entebbe, the raid on Entebbe.
Well, they have movies. I remember in the 60s, from the 50s and 60s, you had a slew of movies about Israel. You had Exodus.
Exodus. Yeah, but that was a history. It's not a war movie. And basically.
Yeah, it wasn't really a war movie, no.
Right.
But there was another movie with Sophia Loren and Peter Finch and Jack Hawkins, but not the name of it, which is about, the War of Independence or something. But those are Hollywood films. Then the Israelis made a couple of movies. There was no movie, though, made about the 6-Day War.
Right.
That I know of. But again, how are they going to make the movie? Because, now they're friends with Egypt.
Right.
So they're not going to make a movie. Yeah, I mean, maybe they make one about fighting the Syrians or whatever, but they're not,
that's right. Nobody's made a movie about ISIS.
Nope. Nobody's
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's I don't know.
There's no money to back it. Nobody wants to say, "Oh no, don't bring that up again." You'll get copycats. You'll be promoting it, something like that.
Maybe, I don't know, but it is curious. They haven't made a movie about ISIS
or Abu Ghraib.
Nope.
And that was a big fucking thing. Abu Ghraib's quite a deal, and not even a documentary.
No, there's no documentary about that I know of.
And
Yeah.
but the reason I'm bringing that up is because there's been several documentaries about the CIA, bringing drugs in and making money to back the Contras. Now, Tom Cruise made one, and Mark
Right,
Wahlberg made one, I think. And
right.
about the reporter who covered it and killed himself by shooting himself in the head 3 times. Suicide. So,
I remember.
so
Shot
there,
himself
there
in the head
was
three
even
times.
movies about that, CIA operations. But they don't
Well,
always cover certain things. I don't know. Maybe they can't get the funding.
well, that's just it. Not only that, they can't get the support. So the CIA, the U.S. government, isn't going to help them make a movie about transgressions by the CIA. So they're not going to give support. They, in other words, a lot of the movies that you saw, I mean, the most movies were obviously about World War II, and they all had the support of the Defense Department and everything like that, because obviously none of them were going to say the Americans were bad, because the Americans, a
Except for
lot
the
of
Vietnam movies, like Platoon.
Vietnam movies, yeah, and some of those movies
Platoon.
they couldn't get support. I think Oliver Stone had problems getting, trying to get equipment or something like that to use when he did Platoon.
Yeah.
So, there's all types of reasons. I don't know. I just know that there's usually a reason. And so when you say there's no movies about ISIS or something, there's a reason. We just don't know what it is.
Because
But
ISIS was really an undercover CIA activity to make an excuse to do, I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't think I'm joking. So
Whatever
yeah, but
reason.
it is interesting. And it's also interesting, like we should make a documentary. We should do this as a project because I don't think well, these days you can make a documentary and just put it on YouTube. There's a channel called Falling Civilizations or something that goes over the demise of different civilizations. I just watched a 3-hour episode about Babylon and the Sumerians. There was so much fighting back and forth between what now we would call Iraq and Iran, between let's say 500 BC, 700 BC to 500 BC, back and forth, and massacre and occupation, back and forth. And so there's so much activity and things in history to talk about, but it's on YouTube, and maybe it gets on the History Channel. But I'm saying there should be a documentary about Hollywood in the movies. I think there wasn't there?
About war movies?
Hollywood in the movies. No, not about war movies, about Hollywood principals, not just actors, maybe directors, maybe producers, who joined the military during World War II, essentially. Signed
Yeah.
up because, World War II is accepted as a moralistic
Right.
war. That hasn't been, usually doesn't get attacked as being immoral.
Right.
So you can say what you want in that one.
There
Well,
were there were, I don't know if there were entire documentaries about that, but I remember seeing within other documentaries about the war, they would mention guys who fought and everything like that. Because I remember they talked about Eddie Albert.
Eddie Albert was in the military?
Oh yeah, he won the Navy Cross, the second highest medal you could win in the Navy and Marine Corps. He
Now,
was
did that
hmm?
Eddie Albert, I'm just trying to, oh yeah, Eddie Albert, okay. So, and there was, of course, Murphy, the guy who got all these awards and that
Audie
made him
Murphy.
Audie Murphy, that made him a movie star.
Right.
And I'm wondering if Eddie Albert, because he, got, did well in the Army, got more roles when he continued.
Maybe he got more roles, but he was already a known actor because what he did was he he was in he was a medic or something, and at Tarawa when they invaded Tarawa, it was a very bloody operation, and a lot of guys were like, if they're landing craft blew up or something like that. They were floating in the water, and he personally picked up 11 guys out of the water, wounded guys. I mean, he would drag them up or jump out, swim over and pull them over or something. And one of the guys he pulled out of the water said, here he was floating in the water. Thought he was dead. That was it. He was badly wounded. And then he's being pulled into a landing craft or amphibious vehicle. He said, by a movie star. I mean, he recognized Eddie Albert. He'd done a few movies before that. And he said, I didn't know. I thought I was, maybe hallucinating or something. What's this Hollywood actor doing pulling me out of the water? And Eddie Albert said, they asked him, they said, how'd you do? You were under fire. You risked your life to save 11 guys. He said, I don't know. I didn't think about it. Just saw 11 guys, these guys are floating in the water or something. And I tried to save them. Most of these guys, they didn't. I mean, you speak to guys who won medals for something. And one guy told me, I'll never forget, Canadian guy said, how did you win that medal? What'd you win that medal for? He said, for being an idiot. He said, I ran out and charged a machine gun nest when nobody else could move under withering fire, and I took out the machine gun nest and I won a medal. He said, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have gone 1 inch forward. I would have never done it. But that's why they want young guys in the military. The funny one was, do you remember the actor Richard Todd?
What movie?
British actor. He was in the Dam Busters and
well, I wouldn't recognize him because they don't. Most of the British actors are like very conservative and very reserved. So I say, all right, drop the bomb. They don't act like crazy guys.
No, but you would.
Oh, wait a minute, Richard Todd. Wait a minute. Is that guy? Wait a minute, Richard Todd. Let me see what he looks like. Let me see his face. Oh, yeah, I recognize him.
Right.
Yeah, Dam Busters.
Right. Now,
there was another British actor who was in a bunch of these movies. But what about Richard? He was in the military too?
Richard Todd, in the movie The Longest Day, he played the leader of the operation to take the first operation of D-Day, to take these two bridges, really, but the one in particular, which they called Pegasus Bridge, over the Orne River. They were the first. It was the first battle of D-Day. Happened like 10 minutes after midnight. And he was in charge. It was a very successful operation. And so Richard Todd was picked to play the commander of that. Turns out Richard Todd was there in that operation during the war. He was one of the paratroopers that helped take that bridge. And he said when they were making the movie, they had one actor run up, one actor is playing a young lieutenant who was running up to Richard Todd, who was playing the commander, to give him a message. And he realized that actor was playing him, Richard Todd. And the producers didn't even know it. They said, they knew that this guy had delivered a message, but they didn't know that in real life, it was Richard Todd who had done it. He was, he saw a lot of action. Who else?
So while we were talking, I looked up just to query, movie stars who became served in the military, right? There's people you would not believe. Clark Gable, Mel Brooks,
I knew that.
Tony Bennett. In addition to the ones you mentioned, Charlton Heston, Hugh Hefner. Hefner. He never saw action, but let's see. But what did he do? I don't know. Oh, he served a total of 2 years in the Army and was relieved of his duties in 1946. But he was in the Army. And but these other guys, Clark Gable was a gunner, and even though he joined when he was 40. Let's see what he did.
Fascinating story. He was sent over to make training films for the Army Air Force. He joined the Army Air Force,
and he wanted to fly combat missions. So he wangled his way into flying combat missions. I think he flew 5 missions, and he wangled his way on. He couldn't be the pilot or the co-pilot, so he said, "Just make me a gunner." And
Right.
supposedly, he actually was credited with a probable, meaning, shooting down one German plane or something. But when the heel of his boot got shot off on like the 5th mission, Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, said, "Get him out of there. We've got money invested in this guy. Get him out of there."
Right.
Otherwise, he would have kept flying.
Yeah.
He was a pretty cool guy, actually. But there were other people who Melvin Douglas.
Oh, there's so many. There's a lot. There's at least 20 to 30.
Oh.
And here's a wild one. I mean, Tony Bennett, I didn't even look up to see what it says. But
Yeah.
Cougar, the guy who was in the
Addams family?
The Addams Family, yeah.
Jackie Coogan, yeah. He won. I think he had a couple of medals.
Yeah. So
Mickey
and Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis was in a submarine. Yeah. He was I think a submarine, then a submarine tender. He was wounded when the one of the iron chains holding the torpedoes broke loose during, when the ship was under fire, and it smashed into his back, and he had a back injury, which affected him for years. So, a lot of these guys had injuries that just went on. Lee Marvin.
Yeah, Lee Marvin too.
Lee Marvin got shot in the ass.
Yeah.
But he was, and he never recovered. I mean, he became an alcoholic, and they think it was due to, what he went through during the war. He just never fully recovered. Also, do you remember Neville Brand?
Yes.
Neville Brand was something like the 4th highest decorated soldier of World War II. And Jim McAdams, the guy I told you about, who was the producer of the Kojak and the Equalizer, he said on the Universal lot, in the back lot of Universal, he sometime in the middle of the day, Neville would walk out of his trailer stark naked, holding a .45 automatic. And people would go running and everything. Thought he was crazy. And he was just getting a flashback. He'd be like, was like sleeping in his trailer. He'd get a flashback. And then people would say, Neville, you all right? He goes, yeah, where am I? He thought it was back on an island in the South Pacific or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
he usually played a heavy.
Yeah.
The tragic ending of Neville Brand, one of toughest guys in Hollywood.
Oh, this is this. Oh, I gotta cut this out. The sound back. So it said he had a unfortunate tragic death, which I didn't look up yet. But the point is, there's got to be 20 or 30 guys.
Oh, at least. I mean, most of the British guys. I mean, Laurence Olivier, Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness was commanded a landing craft. Laurence Olivier didn't really do much. He was in the, just flew patrol missions or something. But all these guys, if they were anywhere near the age, I mean, do you remember the old TV show Robin Hood?
Well, with the one I liked was with a British actor,
Richard Green.
Yeah.
Right. Richard Green landed on D-Day.
Wow.
Company commander on D-Day. I mean, people don't, they don't.
Not many made. Well, it was like 3 out of 100 made it off the beach.
Well, in his case, no, most of them made it off the beach, but he made it through the whole war, which most of them probably didn't. But he was, he was there all through the war. I mean, these guys, because you would see these guys who were like up and coming stars in like the 30s, young up and coming stars, and all of a sudden they disappear during the war years.
Uh-huh.
And that was because, sometimes they'd release them
for a few months to make a propaganda film or something. They did that with David Niven, I think, once. But most of the time, they weren't doing anything because they were in the war. I mean, Tyrone Power was in
Really?
the U.S. Marine Corps. But they were, I mean, like I said, Burt Lancaster, all these guys. Oh, it's a whole story.
Incredible.
The
And
sad one,
some
yeah,
women too. B.
some
Arthur.
women, yeah. The sad one was William Holden, who was the first married man with children in Hollywood to enlist right after Pearl Harbor. I think he enlisted on December 8th, 1941. And he was making training films. And he kept on, trying to get transferred overseas. And his transfers kept on getting turned down. What he didn't know was the studio paid the Army Air Force, to not send him overseas because they were investing in, they thought he was an up and coming star.
Right.
So he thought, he didn't know why, he was trying to get into combat. And the reason was his brother was killed, who was a carrier pilot. And he was killed, I think, in 1943. And finally, towards the end of the war, Holden made it overseas. He finally did. I think he was in the last 6 months of the war. But boy, was he pissed off at the studios because he didn't know,
Yeah. But he's I mean, he was in the battle on Tokyo-ri.
Yeah, he was in the bridges of Tokyo-ri.
The bridges of Tokyo-ri were Korean War.
And he was in the movie, and in the movie, he gets killed. But
I know.
And just like in the book, but the studio wanted him to live. And
oh, really? They wanted to alter the script?
Yeah, and Holden said, if he doesn't get killed in the movie, I'm not doing it, because his brother had been killed. Was a carrier pilot, and he said, it's I don't want any like rosy happy Hollywood endings or something, So
I mean, this goes on and on. Here's Cesar Romero.
I didn't know he was in there.
Yeah, television star. He subsequently served aboard the USS Cavalier in November 43.
Oh,
He saw action during the invasion of Tinian and Saipan.
Saipan, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Henry Fonda,
Henry Fonda was got to a lieutenant commander. Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
Right.
was and Robert Montgomery. You remember Robert Montgomery?
Yeah, sure, right.
He had two PT boats sunk from under him. He was in the Navy, and he stayed in the Navy Reserves after the war, just like Jimmy Stewart did in the Air Force Reserves. Jimmy Stewart eventually became a general. He became a brigadier general because he stayed in the reserves.
Yeah, well, he was he made that movie about the FBI too.
Right.
He's a very straight arrow,
Yeah,
America,
he was a definite Republican. He was a military man. He became, very pro-military because he was a high-ranking officer by the time he came out. He was a commander of a bomb group in England. Everybody knew that. He was he saw a lot of combat, and it changed him. By the way, Audie Murphy, who wasn't an actor before the war,
right?
Audie
he became an actor because of the
right.
because he got the medals for being the bravest man in the war or something.
Right, highest decorated guy. But do you know, he died in his early 40s in a plane crash.
All right.
But for his whole life after the war, he slept with a .45 automatic under his pillow.
Yeah.
His wives used to say, I can't take it anymore. He had a loaded gun under his pillow every night when he went to sleep.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's kind of sad, but, he went through a lot of shit. But Mickey Rooney was assigned to entertain troops, and he wangled his way into the infantry.
He wound up in the infantry.
Yeah, he. I mean, he was supposed to be entertaining going out there and entertaining the troops, and he would go out to the front lines to entertain the troops, and then so he just said, I want to get into this thing, so he did. There's a couple of other actors that had really, unusual. You would have never expected them to be that. There was another actor, I think Claude Akins. There were a couple of other actors that really had, I mean, we're in the war for a while. Oh God, I forgot. I guess if you named him, I know I told you about Alec Guinness.
Yeah. No, so all these names and stuff is like actually it sounds more like a series. A TV series really. And rather than like a documentary or
Yeah.
or maybe a short documentary like the Brits that do this, they'll have like four episodes, each one's like an hour or an
Right.
hour and a half, and they'll do 4 episodes, in a series. So it could be something like that, but it's something for like the History Channel. That's what it would be.
You know who you know what they could do? I mean, if I were making a TV series, like an anthology series, I would have every week a new episode about a different actor
Yeah.
that served in the war, tell their story. But
Well,
then,
I'll tell you though, in terms of theatrics, there's a show that's very popular on PBS called Finding Your Roots.
yeah,
And I watch it every once in a while. Mostly Grace watches it. It's a little bit too woke for me. But they always do two people.
right,
And so that gives a balance because they could be two different kind of personalities.
right,
One could be a comedian, the other one could be serious or something. So you could do the series because some of these stories aren't enough for a whole episode.
right.
But you could do two. The guy, this one or that one, whatever. And however you structure it, it could be a thing. And the other part of it is there's stories like that in contemporary. There was a big deal with this football player who, after 9/11, quit the
Yeah,
team to go in the army, and then he got killed by
right,
another soldier,
right. Friendly
friendly
fire.
fire,
Yeah.
or insanity, one or the other. So there could be stories like that too.
Oh yeah. And
You
what
know,
about Ted Williams, the ball player?
I don't know.
Ted Williams could have had the best record in all of baseball, but he spent 3 years in World War II and 2 years in Korea. He actually got recalled for the Korean War, and he went. He didn't have to. The army said, "Well, your ball player will let you out," and he said, "Nope, nope. I'm recalled. I'm going." He was a Marine pilot in both wars. And he had a good record, but he served 3 years in one war and 2 years in another. Jeez, you got to give him credit for that. And he was a great ball player. He lost 5 years, 5 of his best ball playing years in the service. I mean, it's and they say, I mean, other ball players served in World War, Jackie Robinson and Joe DiMaggio or something.
So now if you throw in not just movie stars, but other areas of celebrities, or possibly even other people who you wouldn't expect, let's say the Rockefeller,
Yeah,
or somebody like that, somebody in the rich family, or a politician who left his position, like a mayor or senator.
yeah, there were some politicians that did. And also, as far as ball players, there was a guy named Mo Berg who played, and this they did make. They were going to make a movie about it. There were 2 books about him. Mo Berg was I think he was a catcher for the Red Sox, and
or the Boston Braves. I'm not quite sure. And he was popular ball player, and he went into the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA, and he was on these special missions that were, I mean, he was at risk several times. He was doing some high level stuff because he was, a highly educated guy. He was a ball player, but as ball players go, he was one of the more intelligent ones. When he joined the OSS, he was sent in, behind enemy lines, and he was Jewish. But he wanted to, that's what he wanted to do. And I actually knew somebody for a while back, years ago, who met him, and he said the guy was brilliant, but really eccentric. I mean, he was a little crazy, and he said he didn't know if it was because of the war or if the guy was always a little crazy.
Yeah, well, a little crazy, you need a little bit of crazy. You have that. You have that in show business. You'll have that in any group. You need that it creates randomity or unpredictable behavior. That's the guy who comes in and buys everybody Frankfurters, or comes in with a circus act, or whatever, does something unusual. Sometimes it's a negative prank, but a lot of times it's just, funny or interesting.
Yeah. It wasn't bad crazy or anything. By the way, another actor who was a radio man on a Navy torpedo plane, Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, the actor, yeah, he was in the service too.
Yeah, he was, I think, Telly Savalas also.
Maybe. It's almost like everybody. But, to me, surprisingly, is Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Leslie Howard, because they're kind of fops. They're not macho guys like Kirk Douglas or Burt Lancaster or Neville Brand.
Douglas was in the Navy, I believe. Yeah. No, but
they're like whooshy. Leslie Brand is like, help him stand up. He's going to be blown down in the wind.
But the ironic thing is that Leslie Howard was actually, I mean, he was a thin, fragile looking guy.
Right.
He was actually a more formidable guy. And I mean, he had all these girlfriends. He wasn't like that in real life. And Douglas Fairbanks Jr. the same way. I mean, these were educated and cultured guys, but they were rough. Douglas
Fairbanks Jr. is like Johnny Depp. He's just like effeminate, like, has an earring,
Right. That's what they saw him as, Sinbad. But in actuality, he was a regular guy.
Yeah.
And he went into the service, and he was in the service for 3 years. And everybody who knew him in the service said, well, one thing about him was he never, you'd never know he was a movie star. He was just one of the guys.
Yeah.
He was, he was an officer.
Well, everybody's just one of the guys. I mean, it's a pretense and of being a celebrity. It's, that's my identity, is my commodity. That's my personality, is what I'm selling. So, but that's so there's lots of material there. We just came up with a show that could have at least 12. Well, it could run for 3 seasons or something. And and then what do you call it? When it does the rounds where you keep seeing things over and over again.
Right.
Residuals,
I think that
play
would be
forever.
an excellent idea. I mean, I'm surprised nobody actually thought of it. I mean, if you think of it just from World War II, it's been, 80 years almost. No, more. I mean, 80 years.
Well, I could give you one reason where you wouldn't want it. All of those stars, when they came back, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are playing parts, and they're going to be cowboys or hero, whatever they're doing. Right. They don't want that, like Jimmy Stewart. They don't want it. Oh, he was in the Air Force. That's Jimmy Stewart. He was in the Air Force. They want, that's Jimmy Stewart. He was in this Hitchcock movie, Vertigo. Right.
Right. They don't want to change the image.
Yeah, he did this thing. He did an airplane movie where a plane crashed in the desert. I forget the name of it.
Oh yeah, The Flight of the Phoenix. Good movie. Yeah, I like that movie.
Right. So it's like he's playing to a certain audience of very straight. He never did anything weird. He didn't do Psycho, you know. He did like straight movies.
Right.
No sex really. I don't know. Maybe there was sex with Kim Novak in one of his movies, or like, at least in a something. But it's like, the Phoenix thing. It's a
Right.
straight adventure movie, sort of.
Well,
So
they did
so
do
they, or
another.
let's say you were the guy in I'm really appreciating that you're tolerating my loss of names. The guy in Lawrence of Arabia,
Peter O'Toole?
Peter O'Toole. So if you're Peter O'Toole and you were a gunner in World War II, you don't want that. you know,
No, maybe.
you want people to identify you as Lawrence of Arabia or whatever other movies he was in. And or let's say it was the guy he did Beckett with Richard Burton.
Yeah.
So Richard Burton, he said, Richard Burton is Thomas Aquinas, he is the part he played. At least he has that identity. And then some of the actors say, I'm sick and tired of that. Let's say Clint Eastwood, I don't want to play Dirty Harry anymore, or I don't want to be Superman anymore, right? Or the most famous one is Sean Connery says, I don't want to be, I'm breaking away from James Bond.
Right.
Play other parts, and he did. He didn't have a great career, but he did some good movies after that. So I could see where the agent would say, no, don't bother playing that up. That's for a very limited audience of people who are nostalgic about World War II or just in love, like sexually aroused by American patriotism. We don't want that because you had other celebrities that were radical. I don't know. I can't even think of one right now, but represented disestablishment. Oh, like the guy who was in Parallax View and the Reds and Dick Tracy.
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty. Yeah, he's like radical, He's making crazy radical movies like Reds.
Well,
or Jim Carrey.
Back in Hollywood in the 50s and 60s, it was important. I mean, a lot of these actors would play up the fact that they were in the war because the public had this image that they were shirkers, that they were just doing, USO bond tours or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted to say, no, I actually did my bit. So
okay, but that's, let's say that's the mid future. That's at the time, but those people grow up and now you got their kids. So
right.
like Robert De Niro, he's what he plays and what he's like, and Christopher Walken and whoever else was in that movie, though, the Deer Slayer.
Yeah.
They want to be noted as, what do you think? Robert De Niro is a great actor. Leonardo DiCaprio, is a movie star. He plays,
right.
and he deserved credit for playing some of the roles he played.
Right.
Some people don't like him, some people like him and like his movies, or they don't. But you think of him as a Hollywood person who makes movies, not as a patriot. Another one. Here's a classic one: Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
He wouldn't want. Well, he might want to say, "Yeah, I was in the Marines," but he's only one of the rare ones. Oh, he's got an interesting story. He grew up. He had a physical impediment where he couldn't speak, and he grew up in a poor family. And he sold the script to Rocky. And he sold it for $25,000 with the agreement that he would be the star. So he sold it cheap, but he got somebody to buy it, and that was it. So he's like, that was it. Day one, he got that, and he became famous.
You know what happened? Because he and his wife at the time were like, they didn't have any money. They were struggling actors. He was living in a,
fifth floor walk up or something like that, studio apartment or something. And he had the script. And James Caan was supposed to play Rocky.
Uh-huh.
The studio wanted James Caan. And James Caan said it turned out he couldn't do it. He had another film he was contracted to do at that time. And he said to Sylvester Stallone, supposedly, as I heard it, look, you really want to play this part? I mean, Stallone was willing to sell it, and not Stallone was going to play. He put it this way: he didn't even know if he had a role. He said, "Well, maybe I'll play Paulie, the part that Burt Young played," but he didn't even know if he was even going to get extra work in the movie. He just was selling the script, and they needed the money. And James Caan said, "Look, sell the script cheaper, but hold out for the role."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Don't worry about the money. You got to think of the future. Don't worry about getting the money now. Whatever you sell the script for, if you can hold on to the role, do it." And so Stallone took that advice, and he did that because, at first he was going to say, "Hey, if I can get $100,000 for the script, and I have to give away the part, hey, we could use that money." $100,000 back then was like, $500,000.
David and Khan told him to stick for the part. Stick for the part. It was a good idea. Good advice. It worked out.
Yep.
Okay, so we could. So as a last hurrah, I was just. Do you know anybody to pitch to?
Pitch who? Pitch what?
To pitch a program. To pitch a package.
That documentary? I don't know.
Yeah, any kind of a package. Producers, or I don't even know how the industry works. Is it like what do they call those guys? Hedge fund guys,
Yeah. Basically, it's difficult. I mean, I've got a couple of plays that one that's already written, and I'm not sure where to go now. Things changed after COVID. I'm not sure. I'll ask. I'll find out. I've got to do it for myself anyway. So if I find,
well, there is always the like I was saying, the shortcut is to just raise $50,000 or not raise $50 and do it on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what that's what I was going to say. What people seem to be doing is using this online stuff like YouTube and everything. And then what happens is somebody will see that and say, hey, we can go further with this.
Especially if you've got 1 million viewers.
Especially, you got 1 million viewers, definitely. But even if you get like tens of thousands of viewers.
I know, but you see, the interesting thing is, it seems to me that most often when Hollywood gets a thing like this, I'm saying Hollywood, but the movie industry, they say, oh, let's turn into a these were the actors who were fighting in World War II, but they were actually doing it because of a UFO connection. We got to get UFOs in there, or the superheroes or something. They turn it into some kind of bizarre thing.
I think this would be, no, because of cable, you could pitch this to a specific cable channel. For instance, the History Channel.
Yeah.
That would be the place to pitch this, which is
that's right. And I got one for the History Channel too. I don't want to start talking about it, but but the thing is, we know this is true, that it's not the idea, it's the persistence and the distribution. It's making it happen. Yeah. That's what matters, not the idea, because everybody's had the same ideas, but it's like, did you make it happen?
Yeah.
What did you do? Oh, I made a call and they never answered because it was on Saturday. What the hell do they expect from me? Why don't you try calling them up on Monday?
Well,
you have to persist.
Yeah. It's not just persisting. There's, I'm supposed to be doing a reading of at least one, and if I can finish the second one, 2 of my plays in Normandy in 4 months. And I have to tell you, I've been working on this since almost 2019.
but working full, quite a bit for the past year or two, and it is a pain in the ass. Nobody wants to help or to take it on until you've done 3/4 of the work already. Then
Yeah.
they'll come in and say, "Oh, all right, we'll help you." So basically, I have places I can do it, but they don't have any money to give me. So
Are you talking about documentary about Normandy?
no, this is a play
A
that
play
that I
about,
just want to do a reading of, and it's a pain in the ass. I would have thought somebody would have said, "Hey, great, that's exactly what we need. This is perfect."
no, wait a
And
second, wait a second. Let me understand. You wrote a play about the Normandy invasion and you
I want
want,
to play about the Canadians in Normandy. I think it's
okay. And you just want to get a reading of it?
just a reading for the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
How long is it?
Between about 2 hours, 15 minutes.
How many parts?
Well, there's a lot. It'll need about, that's one of the problems. It needs at least 10, probably 11 or 12 actors.
No, I mean, but can somebody double up? Play
Oh
two
yeah,
parts?
they have to double up. There's 27 characters.
Oh, there's 27, so you need at least 10 or 11 to play the 27.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's a big deal. No, but wait a second. Is it all, you need them all at the same time, or is it in sections? In other words, could I do, if I broke it into 5 sections, could I do each one with like 4 or 5 actors?
You mean do it on different days, 5
Yeah.
sections? Probably wouldn't be. No, it wouldn't follow quite as well. No.
Well, you're saying the whole thing has to be
Do a one act
delivered in 2 hours? You can't do a segmented?
I could do it segmented, then it would be like a series,
Yeah.
but how to do it under those circumstances in Normandy, because that means I would need the same space for half an hour a day for 5 days in a row or whatever. It's
Wait a minute, you're just talking about a reading. You're not talking about locale.
I'm not talking about doing a full production. A reading means they have the scripts in hand. It has to be rehearsed, but it doesn't have to be 4 weeks of rehearsal. It just has to be 1 or 2 rehearsals, and then they go up and do a reading of the play. And I mean, we do this all the time in New York. So
yeah, but it doesn't have to be in the same venue.
Yeah, well, no, I would do it in different venues if I could.
So you just need to, and it's hard. I understand if you take 5 people and you do segment 1 and then they're not committed to do the following segment, that creates a problem because you have to recast and start over.
Yeah. Then you need that many more actors. I'd be better off with a crew about, and then I need somebody to read the stage directions because it's just a
okay. Wait a minute. How about this? Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm brainstorming. I know nothing about it, but what about making a summarized version? That's half an hour or 45 minutes. 45 minutes with 5 actors. And if it's successful, then you'll have the backing to get the 11 or 15 actors to do the 27 parts in the 2 hours.
Basically, I could do scenes from it. I tried this once. I did scenes from it, and we didn't need more than 5. I think we needed about 7 actors, 6 or 7 actors. I forgot. And I did some scenes from it, about 4 or 5 scenes. So the scenes with the fewest actors I would do. But then I could do that. If that's all they wanted me to do, I would do that. But
well, the reason I'm saying that is because I know 2 different places where they're doing Shakespeare over Zoom. And the point is, or Jim himself is reading Shakespeare.
I know I'm involved in it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So there's a group of people who have enough ham in them. They want to read scripts out loud.
Yeah, so, we do it just for the hell of it. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So but it's to that part of the soul that is like, excuse me, I was talking here.
Well, yeah,
Listen, to want to be heard. So, I mean, in other words, working with what you've got, make the scenes, and then that then gives you a package that's enough to promote and expand it, as opposed to not doing it because it's too complex to get 12 people to stick together, rehearse, and do a thing that's 2.5 hours long. They have to be more committed. They don't want to give you that commission. I think, one of the things is most actors, I know they all have a thing for art and creativity and the work, but it's also self-interest. I don't think that as a group of people, actors are very self-assertive, Excuse me, watch it. Step aside. I'm in front of the light, not you. It's
yeah, there's
upstaging. That's where the phrase comes from. Upstage. No, upstaging is stealing the scene by walking behind the guy. But
right.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's
Pushy,
down.
pushy,
Um, actually, the
peacocking.
whatever. I don't know how well. I mean, look, the way what I'm trying to do now, as far as actors go, look, problem I'm having is that it's all supposed to be Canadians, right? So somebody would say, "Oh, I have friends of mine in Paris who said, "Oh, I can get you a bunch of actors, but they all, they don't speak English that well, and they're playing Canadian, Anglo-Canadian, not French Canadians. So it's just not going to come across that well. Also, a couple of the places want me to have a French translation. I don't speak French. I speak some French, but not enough to translate something. So I have to pay to have that done. Really, if you really want to know the problem, if somebody gave me $50,000 to do this right now, I could get it done in 2 months. I mean, easy. I could just pay actors. I could just fly actors over there, pick whatever actors I want and fly them over. It's the money. It's always the money.
Okay.
That's really the problem. And nobody has any money to contribute to this. There are places there that I know, like museums and everything like that, that would say, yeah, we can give you our space, but we can't give you any money. And so the
Okay.
idea is, how do I get the actors? So I figured what I might do is go to London or check with people in London and see if we can. I mean, it's a lot cheaper to fly people over there, but in my case, I don't have any money.
Yeah, but
So
I don't get this thing about flying. What if it's just a reading, it's audibles, right?
it's
There's
what?
no video. Does it require, you want to have a video of the guy reading, right?
No, 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 no. I don't need a video.
So then why do you have to fly people to London? Why do you have to, what's the
No,
difference where they are?
I have to get the actors who can come across as believably Canadian.
Yeah, but they don't have to come to Canada or the US. They can do it over the phone or over the internet.
Well, we can. You're talking about a Zoom reading.
Whatever. It doesn't have to be Zoom, any kind of technology.
Yeah, I know. They're talking about an in-person. This would be an in-person. The actors have to be there in Normandy.
In Normandy, in the country of Normandy?
In the country of France, the
In
region.
in the neighborhood of Normandy,
Yeah, they would have
the
to be there for the reading.
they
So
have to be in Normandy for the reading.
mhm, that's the whole point.
Yeah, but I'm just okay, but well, that's nice. That's a great definition. But that's like 5 steps up, because from where you are. So you got to say, what's my next step?
And well, first of all, my next step is to finish the second play. But my next step is to say, okay, all right, what do I have to do? I have to translate the play. My next step is to try to, and what I've been doing for the past year is to try to raise money. And again, let's say I get actors who are based in London to do it. Well, that's a lot cheaper to get them from London to Normandy than from Canada or the US to Normandy. So that cuts down my cost, but I still got to raise that. It's still going to be at least a few $1,000s.
All right.
probably more like, if I have to do the translation, we're talking more like about 10 to 15,000. And so
Okay.
far, I haven't had much success in not that I'm an expert at raising money by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been trying. It's just difficult. A lot of these things are things you have to apply for, and it could take years to do it. Plus the fact you got to, fulfill certain responsibilities. You talk about, let's say, woke, right? There was a woman who did a one-woman show in Normandy about her relation. This is the last 5 years ago, about her, relationship with her father, who was a Normandy vet. Well, there was a woman who was doing it, so she was able to raise money for people who, from women's groups and things like that. If the government, I mean, if my play was all about First Nations and Native American people, I could raise money that way. Everything's, it's more difficult now. People don't look at a people look at a project through a colored lens. So in other words, they'll say, okay, but what is this? In other words, we can give you money provided you have at least so many people who are at least so many women in it. At least if you had so many people of a certain ethnicity or whatever. But as far as just money to do the play, nah. And I mean, I tried going through veterans groups. I tried going through the regiment that the first play is based on. And they don't have any money to do for this. Everybody's raising money for their own immediate problems,
Mhm.
that they deal with. So they don't have money to give to somebody else.
Let me interrupt a second. Do you have a synopsis of what the play is?
I have a synopsis, yeah.
It's like 10 pages or less.
No, I have like a synopsis that's a couple of paragraphs.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, do me a favor, send that to me.
You want me to send it to you?
Yeah, I'll talk to somebody. I want to talk to somebody about it. I want to see what it is. I don't know what it is.
All right, I'll send you the synopsis, but you want me to send it to the same email that you
Yeah,
sent
that's me. That's my email.
Okay. All right.
And but you got to hurry up because I don't know how long I'm going to live. I'm not sure. Every once in a while, I hear the beep beep, the train coming.
Ken,
all aboard.
You better hang out for a while. That's all I can tell you.
All right. Okay, that's enough for tonight, right?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's coming on the show.
I don't think so. Not at this point.
But what I'll do is give me a couple of days on that, though.
All right. When I get it, I get it.
Yeah. But in the meantime, I'll find out what Jim never came on, right?
No, I don't think so. No, he didn't. Nope.
Yeah, Jim's been erratic lately because of he's got his own stuff that he's going through, so health wise. So
he does a show every Thursday morning.
Does he on WBAI?
Yeah, 7 to 8. He's been doing it for months, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, called What's Happening or something like that. Here and Now. I think it's called Here and Now.
That's why he didn't come on. He probably did this other meeting, and then he was tired and he went to sleep. Yeah, but my experience is after the meeting, there's a meeting after the meeting to try to unwind from all the frustration, Right. But if he's got to be up by 6 a.m. Yeah. If I would have thought of that, I would have said, "Oh hell, he's not going to come on." Okay. All right. Good night. All right. At the very least, I'll try to get that out to you, and next week we'll try it again. Okay. Good enough. All right. Bye-bye. All right. Speak to you later. Okay. Bye-bye. How do I get out of here? I'm having as many problems getting out of this as you are. Okay, that's the end of
this episode of Going Viral, recorded on January 10th of 2024. Hope to see you next.